We are live.
What are you giggling at over there?
I had to make sure we were on.
Oh, okay. Life and Grace podcast.
Heck yeah.
Back in the back of the nature trail.
We're in the sticks, man.
Yeah, we call this the Garden of. Hadn't really got a complete full name yet, but it's in the very back of our property, and as you can see, there's a cross back here because my niece got married out on the baseball field, and me and her dad made that for her wedding, and when she was finished with the marriage vows, I suppose she didn't need the cross.
Wait a minute, she's not finished the marriage yet.
But I didn't
the
want
ceremony was over.
Anyway, so it is a portable cross. We can take it anywhere we want, and two-piece thing, and it's kind of neat. So we put it back here so it's a kind of a peaceful place to come and hang out, and we thought it might be a good little backdrop to sit and have a cigar and a conversation.
Yeah, hopefully we have a good conversation. We got some good scenery. I took a video, which we're going to show probably before we do this talking, as far as the edit, so you can see some of the path to get back here. It takes you, I don't know, a solid 30 seconds, 40 seconds, I think the video was, just to get back where we're sitting. As long as you're not packing a couple chairs and microphones and everything else and backpacks full of stuff. It takes you about 40 seconds to get back here to a decent stride. But anyway, it's a decent day. It's not too sunny.
It's a little stagnant, but we'll be okay. Troy, you'll see. Yeah.
Out of here.
You might see the sweat on our brow, but it's not horrible, and it's obviously it's always better when you have a cigar in your hand and you're outside. Neat thing about this back here is, we're actually fairly close to the city of Wichita, but being back here gives you this sense of kind of being in the backwoods a little bit, and it's definitely serene. But from time to time, you might hear an engine rev or some kind of a
rock and roll
motor
music blaring.
Yeah, or there's a relentless rooster, I call him over here. He generally goes all day.
Yeah, that little stinking thing goes. I've heard him. He's reminded me of all the roosters in Hawaii that we experienced back in February. That the chickens everywhere on the island of Kauai, they were everywhere.
Venezuela was the same way, only it wasn't chickens; it was roosters.
Yeah, they were all roosters and chickens everywhere.
Huh.
But anyway. We digress, I guess is how we say, right? I don't know.
Yeah,
so not why we came back here. We'd come back here to talk about chickens.
Well, if he starts going, it'd probably be a good thing to talk about. But sometimes he's got a really, really strange, what do you call it, a call? A cock-a-doodle-doo. He doesn't cock-a-doodle-doo all the time. Sometimes he sounds like an elephant blowing its horn.
He was making some weird sounds the other night when we were outside. But anyway, we got together here with this Life and Grace podcast to talk about some life, right? You want to talk?
Yeah, there's always something going on. We're as long as we're above ground, I suppose there's something we can discuss or talk about. But this week's been a pretty uneventful week for me, and I just do a bunch of baseball lessons and stuff, and just getting to today, Sunday, going to church this morning is always a wonderful refresher for the week to come, and
Absolutely.
so coming on off that and get to sit here and chat with you for a little bit, and that's always good, and sometimes. Sometimes it flows a little better than others, but I think that obviously, it's not really scripted. So, and I think that's the best way.
I don't do scripts. It never feels right. I wouldn't be a very good actor, probably. One, my memory is terrible, so memorizing lines would be tough for me, probably. But we had good church. I got to make I wouldn't say fool of myself. That's a little over the top, but I got to expose myself emotionally somewhat on the stage at church today.
Yeah,
in a
good way.
Right?
The forum was about it was just talking about the introduction into small groups and what they get out of the small group environment. And our church heavily promotes small groups, and it's a good thing. And
I believe so.
And Troy was up on stage today to discuss the small group
Small group.
experience that he's had, and he's a sap, and he cried, and that's okay. That's
I didn't bawl though.
that no, but
No,
I mean,
I choked up.
yeah, but I think that's really cool if you can, you
Eyes
can
got
be
watery.
that. It's crying. It's all crying.
Oh, okay. It's basically crying.
Your shoulders weren't bouncing up and down. I'll give you that.
No snot.
No, there was no lip quivering.
Okay.
But yeah,
There was
you
a
could
tear.
you could tell. Yeah, you
I
could
choked
tell.
up.
But again, I think the vulnerability that goes along with that is super cool.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of standing in front of a congregation of people that you call your family or your church, that vulnerability is also I think comforting. Because
Yeah.
I think that's a fear of a lot of people. The people get afraid
Oh.
to be vulnerable. They're afraid to show who they really are for fear that somebody might have an opinion about
Oh,
them.
yeah. And call him a wuss.
Yeah. I wasn't gonna
Because,
say it.
Well, I didn't feel like a wuss. I'm just saying that's a guy thing. Look at you, little crybaby, you big wuss. And I guess I've always been a wuss in that way because it's emotional. I get emotional fairly easy, not probably as much as I used to, but Dave, our pastor Dave, just the main thing that got me was he wanted me to say how small group has benefited in some way to transform me, or if it has it, and in what way. And I spent you told me a little more than a week ago you wanted me to come up there, so I kind of spent most of the week kind of thinking, I hope I'm transformed. Am I really transformed, or am I being arrogant and thinking that I'm transformed? I think small group definitely has been a big part of it, but it's the combination of the small group continuing from church has helped me, because if you ask Brandy, when I miss church and then when small groups are going, because they don't go all year round, they go mainly during the school. And if I miss a Wednesday going to small group, she says I'm kind of grouchy. So
You start to get cranky, do you?
I'm like, I didn't get my fix. I got to go cry somewhere. But I don't normally cry at small group. I have, but I don't normally do that. We have really good guys, and I've learned a lot.
Well, you can't do it every time. It would kind of lose its
because you're like,
effectiveness.
oh, come on, you're faking
Pretty
it.
soon they might really
They're
think you're a
faking it.
wuss. Or it's just
You're just doing it for effect.
He just wants our attention.
Yeah, look at him standing in
He
the
can
middle.
cry on cue.
That's pretty good. I don't. I've got a daughter that does, but or can. Not
She,
does.
just to get what she
Just-
wanted.
Yeah, she used to. Our oldest daughter Haley used to stand in front of the mirror when she was a little kid, practice crying, and she was really good at it.
Put her cry face on.
Put her cry face.
Cry
on.
face is not a cute face. So to
normally.
do that in front of the mirror, you can't be pleased with what you're seeing. What are you trying to make, the ugliest cry face?
Ugliest, saddest, pathetic looking cry face. My face wasn't that way today, was it? Was it a pathetic cry? No, it wasn't. I was
No,
holding
you
it
looked.
back.
You honestly, you looked at peace, and you looked like you really.
Well, I was comfortable.
Well, and I think you had a genuine message that you wanted to deliver, and I think you did it in a very abrupt, emotional way, which is the best
That's
way.
good. Good.
It's the best way. I think if anybody took, anything from that other than what I took from it, which was like, Jesus, guy. I mean, obviously you're impacted by the environment, and that showed, and I think that's the gist of small groups. I mean, I've been in one forever, only until recently have not,
Yeah.
because I haven't found one that really coincides with my schedule. But
Yeah.
I loved what I got out of that, and it's almost like you become a kind of a part of a little band of brothers outside of the church, but you're still part of the same church.
It's just a continuation, outreach of the church.
Yeah, I remember when we started that. We used to get up early in the morning and go to West Urban baseball
5:30.
field. Yeah,
Wasn't it? Yeah.
and we'd
5:30
go
in
into the
morning.
concession stand they hadn't turned the heat on yet. I don't know if they did. They turn it on when we were in there, or was it always cold?
I think it was just cold.
But pulling up to that old baseball complex in the early morning before the sun comes up, before most people are up, it added a little element to it based on thinking like, golly, you're sacrificing a little bit to get up in the dead of the winter You rise from your beauty sleep. You don't have to. You don't have to.
No,
It's that you choose to.
That makes it.
And I'm
even
not
better.
going to work or anything. I was going to this men's group, and it was such a neat thing because it just gave you a sense of like, you know what, it's worth it. It's worth it. So when you get up, you let it go out.
I did.
Well, when you get
Keep
up and you have a got no
keep
problem with that. But that sense of sacrifice, like you're getting something out of what you're doing, even though you don't have to. You're honestly, for me, it ended up being more of a selfish thing than anything else. I think probably the best thing should be like, what can you give to the group?
Yeah.
But I ended up getting probably more out of it than in anything I ever gave. That those people are really there to, share insight and biblical perspective and sing and love on each other. I mean, it was good.
Well, yeah, I think that kind of goes really the small group feel and setup. To me, kind of goes along. We kind of discussed maybe we wanted to talk about, what it is to be a teammate, and really, I think small group. That little team of guys, if you will, or women, if you're in a women's group. And then we also have couples groups and things like that for people that would rather do that, and that's absolutely fine as well. But in our case, you got a group of guys sitting around, and man, that small group that you got me into, which was my first small group, that was 10 years ago already, which is crazy. We had some older guys. We were... Well, with the one exception, I think there was a guy that came, a younger guy than us, but we were the young guys 10 years ago at 45.
Yeah.
And being the young guys, we had a couple, two guys that were in their 70s.
Remember Max?
Max was...
The old farmer. And
yeah. He had a heck of a story. That would be an interesting book if he wrote it. But
yeah, he was fun to have around. He's so insightful and so much wisdom.
Oh, wow. And that's a great thing about the small groups and the group that I'm still in. And actually, Joe Harrison was in our first group 10 years ago. And the last couple of years, I've been in a group that Joe's also in still. And Joe's somewhere around 80. He's 79, 80 years old at least, I do believe. And he'd be fine with me telling you that because I think he's pretty excited that he's, still kicking. He's 79, 80 years old, and he's fine. And he's a really good knowledge of scripture and understanding, and he hadn't always been that way. He came to Christ later in life as well. So that team, it is kind of a team feeling. That's kind of where I was going, because we're there to help each other. We bring our own individual experiences in that group, and we try to share and help one another with those. And we try to help the other one up when they're feeling down. So when they need some inspiration, we're there to lift them up. And that's what as a group, we're trying to do. And I think that's what we do in teams.
You bet. Well, that's what you just said, and in my opinion, would essentially be the best way to define a good teammate is, somebody that, doesn't only go about their business well, but somebody that also, is an encourager to their teammates and actually makes the people around them better as well, and there's a lot of guys who are really good, athletes or whatever team you're on. It doesn't have to be a sport, but whatever team you're on, there's a lot of guys that are really good players, and they show up every day and they contribute because they're good, from that standpoint. But my experience is that good teams have a, not just are not just talented, they have a chemistry that goes along with it. And, where does that come from? Where does that team chemistry come from? And I was asking myself that question. I was like, okay, it has to be because of a group of good teammates, guys that legitimately, pull for each other and try to help each other and have a sense of, trying to win by doing it together. And you start to legitimately care about people that you're with every day and competing on the same field with, or the same arena.
Yes. Yeah. I've been on, growing up, as far as teams were concerned, I didn't start super young. I was probably fifth grade before I started any team sport. Growing up with my grandparents, there was a lot of stuff I wasn't able to do. One, maybe because they couldn't afford it, or we couldn't get to some of the practices. And I was just unaware of some things that were going on. But nonetheless, I started, football, fifth and sixth grade, then started, normal football, basketball, track, that kind of thing. So I've been involved in teams and sports, and then also, for work. So there's always similarities across the thing. That's what sports are so great about. They can take you, and it's life. If you really sit down and look at it. Now, that's what teams are supposed to be, or sports are supposed to be. It's just a reflection of life. And if you can handle the sport well, and you can handle playing with teammates well, you're probably going to succeed in life as well.
Life is
much easier.
Think of life as a team sport.
It should be.
Think of who's on your team in life. From your, of course, my own world is my wife and my daughters, and now I've got a son-in-law and one coming, and so I'm going to get some extended family as well, and of course, brothers and sisters and cousins and aunts and uncles, and you can go as far as you want, but that's your that's your team, and so bottom line is what you just said, as far as a team being basically a portrayal of what life is going to be like. That's a really good perspective, because if you think about it, life is going to come with plenty of ups and downs. You're going to win some, you're going to lose some. You're not really keeping score per se. I don't know how you would determine a win versus a loss. but sometimes you probably
can figure that. Sometimes it's pretty obvious. It slaps you in the face.
Right. Well, sometimes what you think is a loss might actually end up being a win down the street.
It does happen.
Yeah. What do you got? Are we getting ready to get attacked by a lion?
I saw something pop out, and we could have a deer come walking.
We could
come walking through here.
Do you know wildlife is genuinely curious? I've discovered, because you used to have a lot more deer around here than we do now, but when we used to come out and hang out in the field and whatnot, that's when they would show their face. And I'm, now I'm kind of more of a small creature watcher, more of a bird. So I put a bunch of feeders
of your own home.
Yeah. And so when I watch them, though, sometimes, like if I'm sitting out on the back patio, that's when the hummingbird comes to the feeder, or that's when especially those titmouse, little tufted titmouse birds, they're very curious, and they come right up close to you.
Yeah, well, that's fun. That's it's pretty cool. So something caught my eye. I didn't mean to cut us off right there, but hey, it's going to happen. Something's going to, as long as it doesn't come falling from the sky, we'll be okay.
Well, it'd be a good podcast if we did
get attacked by
something, or something fell on us from the sky.
As long as it's not
I don't know if we'd be around to tell a story, but
anyways, birds flying over.
Ooh, I hope none of that falls from the sky.
I know.
Of course, you don't have to worry about it as much, because it just wipes off with a wet wipe.
Squeegee.
I gotta have a wash.
No, I'll wash after if that happened. I'm just saying. The wife wouldn't appreciate it very much. So anyway, back to the team. So we were talking about family. That's a big part. Church is really also a big part of that team, because that's where our who's our main coach, I guess, if you will.
Right.
Yeah, it's supposed to be Jesus.
Right. Well, in the big picture.
Big picture. He tells us, here's the plays I want you to run.
Yeah.
And unfortunately,
I think it's kind of like small groups. If you think about it, Jesus is the big guy. He's the big guy.
We should be looking
who else is called the big guy?
I don't know.
Anyways,
somebody.
But he's the one running the plays, but within that are just like the small groups in our church. You have all these little subgroups that you operate within, and not all of them are church groups, of course. Some we've got some friends that aren't necessarily believers, so they're not necessarily part of that that team per se, but they're part of our team,
Yes.
So.
Yeah.
So just like however you structure it, it's up to you. But the bottom line is, it in a team environment, if you think about what a good teammate is, let's talk a little bit about that. Well, you've been on teams, I've been on teams. So how do you consider one of your teammates to be a good teammate? If you see them and you watch them on a daily basis, what sells that?
Well, what sells it to me would be, one, that somebody walks the walk, that they talk. They got the talk going, but are they walking that walk? And if you just keep that in a sports setup. If you got the guy that's running hard, that's always trying hard, and he doesn't always have to be the best athlete to be a team leader. It's not always the best athlete, in my mind, is the best leader for multiple reasons. But let's say what I look at is a guy it's there. He's there on time every day. He's working just as hard as everybody else and probably harder than most. And then when he sees you maybe holding something back, he can hold you accountable maybe a little ways and that doesn't mean yelling at you and screaming at you, telling you that you're being a lazy jerk. He's also saying, come on, let's do a little bit better. Keep up with me. Or he's just encouraging. And that's a legit thing that I've seen. And I've had good teammates that have been that way in high school. And that's what, that's the type of person I would follow if I was going to say that's my team leader right there, because I'm not just going to follow a jerk.
Right. Well, I could say another thing, just kind of on the same line, because you mentioned like the guy doesn't have to be the best player on the team. On the flip way of saying that, I would say the best player on the team isn't always a good teammate either. Because they're good, they're talented, but I mean, if the team can't thrive because there's one guy who is super self-absorbed or what have you, anyways, they don't play or gel together as a team because there's a bad apple. It's amazing how only one guy on a what could be a good team can really disrupt that team chemistry. And the team chemistry, it comes from the top. It doesn't come from the bottom. I mean, you're not going to get probably the worst player on the team to necessarily be that guy up front. He might materialize into that guy, but the leadership, the coach, the whatever it is of whatever group you're a part of, that's where it starts. So I mean, that's to me, a teammate is somebody that is also a good teammate, is somebody that's willing to stand up in front of said team and take charge and also take fault if they need to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the coach for sure, that's always helpful, because a lot of people take their cues from the coach. If the coach is a jerk, it's really difficult for the players not to feel that and also reciprocate in the same way, and they mirror back that reflection the coach is putting off. That's why I was saying it goes back to the church. God, Jesus as our coach, if you will. I mean, saying this in that way, our leader who we're supposed to look up to, we're supposed to reflect that image. We are an image bearer of Christ, not physically. That is not necessarily, I believe what that means. It means how we act and how we treat others as the image of God and how God wants us to treat others. So the same goes in a baseball or basketball, football team. Doesn't matter. It really all is the same. If your coach is a good person and wants the best for all the individuals on that team, you feel it.
No doubt. And you start to see too the good teams that do well as far as their chemistry is concerned. They have fun.
Oh yeah.
It's obviously fun to win, but it's also when a team had good chemistry, it's fun to be around the people you're with. And so again, that goes to any environment. Like, why would I want to go to work in an environment where I don't enjoy myself? I don't like the people I'm with. I go there to make a paycheck. Well, you know what? You can be part of changing that environment, and I think a lot of people go to work and they try to just say, I'm just going to punch the clock. I'm going to do what's asked of me. I'm going to stay out of things, and I'm going to go home and relax, kick my feet up and have a beer. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I mean, any arena that you're in is part of a team generally. So if you're going to a job and you're that guy that doesn't like to be there and is in a hurry to leave and doesn't want to help the guy beside you, then maybe you're the one that's got the problem, or you're the one that's not being a good teammate, right? Because bottom line is you kind of have to be at work. You need to work. So why not make the most of it and try to get along with the people you're with?
Yeah, and that's unfortunate because, I mean, growing up, I was part, one of those hourly workers that, probably did just, I came in, I did did what I was supposed to do, and I did my 8 hours. Sometimes I did my 10 hours, whatever it was. And it was kind of miserable to be there in a lot of ways. 20, well, I don't know how many years ago now, because I'm getting old, 25 plus years ago, I worked for a small company. Well, it was a good sized company. It doesn't matter. But the group of guys that I worked with, we would compete
Yeah.
to make it fun.
Right.
We'd go around and we had to pick orders. We'd get a sheet of stuff to have to pick. We'd have to go to different parts of the warehouse or whatever, and we'd have to go pick those orders, bag the parts, count the parts out, bag them up. And we tried to see who could do the most lines. Every order has lines on it. Let's say 10 lines per order or whatever it was. And by the end of the night, we're like, how many lines you get?
Right.
And we would make a competition of it. And then how many accurate lines did you have?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only way, we made the nights go by quicker if we worked 10 hours. It's just more fun. You didn't have to necessarily like all the guys because we had a plethora of personalities that worked there and backgrounds. And
You just realize you're on the same team.
we were just, we're all there for the same reason. And the more productive we were, the better the company did. The better the company does, the more likely that you're going to benefit as well. And that's what I think we've we've lost. And I can say that now as a manager,
Right.
there's not that same work ethic. And I'm not just sitting here picking on the youth, because there are some youth that get it, but not as a whole. And I've seen many of age group, they just don't have that same I don't want to work that hard. I'm going to go hide in the bathroom, sit on my phone, and that kind of thing.
Or I want the career job right now, which isn't very realistic if you think about it. It's
I want
just
more
not.
money.
Yeah.
How do you get more money?
Well, you earn your stripes.
Yeah.
You don't always start at the top. Some people do. I mean, it'd be nice if that happened. It's not a problem if it does. But being a part of a job, you can show up there every day and punch the clock. And if you do your work diligently, you're helping the team. You don't have to go in there and be buddy with everybody. Yeah. But what I don't understand is the person that has trouble showing up, or the person that they're trying to earn a living. I mean, it's pretty necessary, and it just doesn't make sense to me. I worked at Boeing as a mechanic for 5 years, and it was kind of the same thing you were talking about. I was putting the skin on the upper cab section of the 737, so it was fast-paced work. We were on a bar line, and we were pumping one of those things out from our shop every day, And it got to the point where, they start switching up people, and I was just like, I don't understand why would you do that? I mean, if you've got a really good team and they're rocking this product and they're putting it out the door, why would you switch it up? And it's kind of the same thing you're starting to see, again, I'll reference baseball. In Major League Baseball, I mean, people just up and leave without any loyalty to the team that they're on because of a better contract, because of money, because they're going to go play for a contender. Or some people choose to go to a different team because they think it might be an easier trek to the major leagues because it's a less talented organization. Ooh. It's just become so much about, I'm serious, I've heard it many times. Yeah. It's just become so much about money that, people have lost the true understanding of what you're doing there. I mean, and ultimately, shouldn't it be about trying to win the World Series? And that is still what it's about. But in the whole midst of it, in negotiations and the building of teams, it's more of a business. It's kind of sad, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to we should be trying to win in life, basically. So how do you win in life? That's probably a huge wide open thing, but I think it's going to have to start with one. Julie actually said it in church today, which is crazy that she said it in church today, because I heard it probably 3 times earlier this week. The main 2 things that we're supposed to do is to love our God with all of our heart, all of our mind, all of our soul, all of those, right? And then love our neighbor as ourselves. Now, if we were to do that, love our neighbors.
You put them in the right order, by the way.
I did put them in the right order. I didn't say them as far as the first one all there, but with all of our mind, with all of our heart and soul, we should love God, and then we should love our neighbor as ourselves. So that means we want people to succeed.
Right.
And I don't think most people today care if somebody else succeeds. They just don't. You got to understand, if you don't care what happens to other people, that comes back on you, because when other people start failing left and right, it makes it harder for you to succeed. As our economy goes down, as our politics go down, as the world falls around us, it's because I don't care what those people, I don't care about those people. And that's it's a really hard one, but if you stop and think about it, your success benefits me.
Well, and that's, and that goes on any scale.
Yes.
Whether it's in a family, whether it's in a job, whether it's in politics, whether it's in global economics, whatever it is it like, it's all relative to the population, it's all relative to everyone and everything. So, if somebody wants to, go live in a mansion in a secluded forest and all by themselves, and that makes them feel safe, and I mean, and they're not around anyone. I mean, I don't understand that. I think for me, being part of a team means, I think personally, it means being relational. I think you have to be willing to fail with dignity. You have to have character, because when the rest of the team isn't watching, are you still doing what you need to do to benefit the team, or is it just you're out there pleasing yourself? And so there's a difference in that too. So being a good teammate isn't always what you do on the field, on the court, at the job. I mean, if you're a good teammate, you're going to come to the job ready. I'm going to get a good night's sleep. I'm going to get to work a little early, so I'm not all panicky and discombobulated. So there's so many characteristics to me in terms of being a good teammate, and I just think it got lost somewhere along the line because of talent, and I think the whole teammate thing is, this guy's a great teammate because he contributes, on the field or whatever, and being a contributor is helpful to the team, but that doesn't necessarily make everybody else that much better.
No, if you're just sacrificing everybody else, it's easy. Let's say in basketball, it's probably easier to describe, in my mind, in basketball, which was my favorite thing to play. I loved basketball, not so much to watch it anymore, but I used to really love to play it. If you're a stinking ball hog and you're just popping shots, and you might be making some, but who was wide open? Look down underneath the basket. Somebody may be wide open for a better shot, more consistency, higher percentage of making that shot than you sitting out at 3-point, where you shouldn't probably be at the 3-point line shooting. So, when you're not passing the ball, hey, you know what? Let's give this guy some looks. Let's give this guy an opportunity to score. That goes back to life. If you're not helping that person in some way, whether, your kids, helping them in school and giving them the best opportunities that you can, and working with them, studying when they're kids and helping them learn things, you're hurting them. Well, I already know it. So, they can figure it out. I had to figure it out on my own. They can figure it out on their own. But
that's not being a very good teammate. It's not
a good teammate. And you're not being a good leader as a parent, as a father, in my case, if you don't spend the time trying to develop those kids, teaching them right for wrong, whatever it may be, or as a manager, in my case at work, I'm trying to, and I feel sometimes like I'm not the greatest, I'm not getting something across. So, I stop and, I'll bring everybody in and go, okay, guys and ladies, 'cause I got some ladies working for me too. And, here's what I need to see. I need you guys to get off your phones a little bit. You're spending too much time on the phone, or you're doing this a little bit different. What can I do to help you? I make sure to tell everybody that works for me, my job is to help you be more productive. That's my job. So therefore, I try to be the best teammate that I can. I'm not just sitting there leading and going.
Well, and you don't want to do that in a forceful way.
No.
I mean, think about it as a boss.
Yeah.
I mean, when you tell people like, "Hey, you can only be on your phone for 10 minutes during your break or whatever," and you restrict them like that, then you have disgruntled employees, and they don't. It's kind of like Christianity, It's like Jesus had people flock to him. If he would have came as a jerk and an almighty God and said, I'm your God and you need to worship me, people might have been scared into it, but they wouldn't have done it by their own will. They wouldn't have done it because because of love or because they wanted to help the person next to them, So. It's not to me, it's not about collecting a paycheck. It's not about going 4 for 4 or throwing a shutout.
Right.
It's about connecting with people and the relationships that you can make in any arena are to me the most valuable thing that we possess is those relationships. So when people just opt out because they're just wanting to get theirs and that's it, then that's not the best teammate. I mean, hopefully they at least contribute by being there and working hard, but it's not the best teammate.
It's not the best teammate. And I mean, I'm sitting here trying to think. I mean, I obviously wasn't brought up in that environment like you're talking about as far as like Major League Baseball. Not saying that you were always in Major League Baseball, but you coached a long time for Major League Baseball in the minors. You worked your way up. You spent some time coaching in the major leagues as well, AAA and all that stuff. So you've seen from wide range. But, I mean, it'd be real easy to become self-centered when you're making $30 million a year. Mm-hmm. Some of them are making, that's probably more football. I don't know what they're making right now in Major League Baseball, but they're making some multi-million dollars. And you can see them becoming really self-absorbed because all I'm here to do, guys, is get as much money as I possibly can, and I don't care what you guys do. And I know there's those kind of guys out there. You see it. You can see how they act when they're in the dugout. You can see how they act when they're on the pitching mound sometimes or in some other places. So, in that scale, you just take away that money and nothing changes. I mean, that's the same thing at work that I see. It's the same thing I've seen in church. That's why church has gotten a bad rap over the years. People have given that church a bad name. It has nothing to do with God, but that religion has become a team sport with a bad rap. Right. Because you have these guys that have been leading these teams in these churches, and these guys have becoming, all they're worrying about is putting butts in seats and getting as many of those seats filled as possible to where they're growing their churches so big that they're not good leaders anymore. Not 100%. And I'm saying this broad terms, I know.
Well,
but
it loses its intimacy for sure.
It's hard to make a relationship when you're standing on a stage and you've got 5,000 people sitting in front of you. I think you lose some things. Now, do they speak good words and are they still speaking the message? I hope they're speaking the message because that's what we want. We want the biblical message to get out there. But when you're self-absorbed as a leader, you don't get the right message out there. You're sending a different message when you're doing those things. So the majority of the time. So we lose that. And then it goes back to, you said it, and also Julie said it today. It goes back to the relationship thing, and we should be trying to have that relationship with individuals and having a relationship with God, with Jesus. Now, it's us reciprocating, that love and that obedience, and that's part of a relationship that we have. Just like my wife and I, we try to reciprocate each other. I give her love, she gives me love in return. I respect her, she respects me, and that's what you want in a good teammate. That same feel.
Well, I think the word "give" is a wonderful word in relation to that because, if you think about being if you're a good teammate, and we'll keep using that word, it means that you're probably interested in giving to the team more than what you can get from the team. You should be a contributor if you're a good teammate, and That's whether you're talking about the church or or said team that you're part of, and it's not just contributing from the standpoint of showing up because you're checking a box or a time card or whatever. It's truly trying to be there because somebody else might reap the benefits from it. They might see your work ethic and copy you. They might, you might get an opportunity to talk to somebody when, you're there 10 minutes early before work, and all of a sudden that person comes in and they're struggling with something, and you get an opportunity to conversate without it being on the clock, so to speak. So, but the bottom line is what are you doing to contribute?
Mm-hmm.
And I just think we've talked about this a lot in terms of takers and givers, and I think that's a wonderful badge of honor if you're a good teammate, because you think of the character traits that go along with that, from hardworking to loyal to somebody that's willing to fight for you, even when you might not deserve it, but if you're on the same team, if somebody's struggling, you're going to be on teams where there's going to be people on that team that are struggling. So do you just kick them? Do you just kick them to the curb?
Get off my team.
Do you just kick them to the curb, or do you figure out how to help them? And it takes a team of people to help people sometimes, and so. And then there's other times where you just, you've run out of options. And unfortunately, for the betterment of the individual, you have to dole out hard love. And unfortunately, that's part of it too. Or, some teams, this is the hard truth, like in professional baseball, if you're not good enough. But that's hard to bear in life. But there are some times and places where you just need to get better.
Yeah, and it's okay. I mean, it goes back to that's not acceptable these days. For some reason, you have to, this guy is not near as good. He probably shouldn't be on this team. He probably should be back down in single A. There's no way in the heck he should be on this major league team. The guy can't hit the ball for nothing. He drops pop flies and, all the time, and his development's not quite there. You know what? That's okay if your development's not where you want it to be, but get back down to where you have a better chance of learning and developing, and then you're going to get better. You may not ever make it to that level, but if you're the type of person that just gives up, that's the issue.
Well, if you had two guys on an equal playing field, and they're both pretty equal, in all facets of the game,
right?
And one of them's a turd and the other guy is a good teammate, and you get an opportunity to go to the next level, they're not taking the turd because, I know this in a major league clubhouse, the one thing that is held in very, very high regard is the chemistry of the team. And if there's anybody that's there that's disrupting that, especially if it's the star players, if they're noticing it, that person's not going to be around that clubhouse very much longer. So, that's just something, at that level that's held probably in the highest regard. Yeah. Of course, you got to be talented too. And there are some guys that are so talented that their character is overlooked a little bit. But bottom line is, what's it hurt?
Yeah.
What's it hurt to be a good teammate? What's it hurt to?
Yeah. What do you lose?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. As a matter of fact, it's the opposite.
Yeah.
I think you're going to gain the satisfaction of the good faith gesture or whatever it is that you reach out and help somebody else become better. Maybe it's a piece of advice. Maybe it is, physically helping them get up and go, or, whatever it is. And again, it doesn't have to pertain to baseball, whatever arena, whatever.
No, it doesn't.
Whatever game you're playing, I guess. But if you're there and you're just there and you're just, I want to get 4 at bats today and I want to go to the house and that's it. It's probably going to reflect on the team over time anyway.
Yeah, over time, and I think we've probably touched on this multiple times in some of these conversations, but it goes back to you said something about family. You try to help as much. I kind of use this my brother as an example, and if he ever watches this, love you, but it's not a hate thing by any means. It's you try to help as much as you can. You try to bring those people in, whether it's teammates or people at work, but you reach out and you help. Hey, now I just kind of lost the word I'm looking for, but you put your hand out. I set people down. Let's just use this. I set people down in my office and go, hey, I don't know what you've got going in your life, but I'm noticing stuff. You try to bring them in and have conversations. I do this anyway. Set them down. I don't just bring people in and write them up and chew them out. I ask them what's going on. I see that your head's not in the game, if you will. And, is there anything I can do? Is there something that we can do to change some things? But like in personal life, when that stuff happens and you've reached out and you've tried to help and you try to help, sometimes you have to kick those guys again out of your personal team, even though you've tried to help them. But it's better for you because you have to worry about yourself for life. You have to worry about your own soul sometimes as well.
Well, and you have to worry about the rest of the team.
You have to, because if it's just dragging your family down, if it's bringing, bad things into your marriage because you're extending this handout that needs to be stopped, you just can't do certain things. And, as part of a team, love you, stay back here. Those boundaries again that I've said multiple times are good to have.
Well, but not to say that those boundaries can't change.
Well, they can't, right?
Somebody needs to change something, and so just because at present it's not where it needs to be doesn't mean, you can't reconcile that down the road. And you said that earlier where it came to like sending a player down, go work on what you need to work on. It's the same type of thing. You're constantly, you're talking way too much.
I'm talking way too much. I'm going to light this again.
That's what it is. But, even in reference to your brother, if there was a time, 3-4 years down the road or whatever, I don't mean to put a time frame on it, but if he came and said, hey, you know what, I was in a bad place. I made a lot of mistakes. I guarantee you would say, okay, yeah, come on, and
that's that's the desire for that to happen for sure.
But, at the same time, it doesn't always happen. First of all, some people just never find their way back to that place where they can be a contributing factor to that team. And that doesn't mean they're not talented enough always. Sometimes it's that they didn't contribute as much as they probably could have or should have.
Well, that's the sad thing. Not just my brother. I've seen it with lots of people. They get involved and they become what seems like from the outside looking in, selfish, self-centered. Not saying my brother is self-centered or anything, but he's been fairly selfish in his life. And I've been plenty selfish in my life. I talked about this, I think, on our last podcast. And when you're in that, somebody needs to set you straight and just say, I don't like how you're being. You gotta quit and, go figure it out. But you just can't be in this circle until you do. I want you to figure it out.
Well, I
just can't help you anymore.
I think initially you tell them that and leave them in the circle or on the team, and then give them an opportunity to develop, because that's the word I was looking for. Well, development. Yeah, development is the key to anything. It's like, if what you're doing isn't working, then obviously you need to change it, and it may not be a drastic change. Sometimes it's just changing something little. And making a goal for yourself of, I'm going to leave 10 minutes earlier to work, or I'm going to start off my day. This is one that I started doing, and I think it's being a good teammate, because it puts me in the right place right when I start my day, which is before I get out of bed, when I open my eyes, the very first thing I like to do is say a prayer. Just the very first thing when I'm awake and I'm cognizant is just to say a little prayer, like, good morning, Jesus. I thank you for another chance to go through another day, and pray that you're with me through it all, and I can reflect what you want me to reflect, and so those little things, those little habits that cause you strife in a team environment, you got to change them. I've worked with so many kids out here in the building, and sometimes, I can tell there's certain kids that, they have trouble listening, and you can tell when you're talking to them, you can tell that they're just like, they're flighty and their mind's wandering and they're into other things. And, inevitably you have to snatch them up and say, hey, this is important. I want you to listen to this. And they don't always make change right away. And sometimes it takes time, and sometimes it takes repetitive message. You got to take that same message and keep delivering it. But there is a time where they're not going to make the team. There is a time where if of course, sometimes it's talent or lack thereof, but sometimes it's also their own undoing. Most of the guys, I can tell you this, in professional baseball, most of the guys I've seen that have failed because of, or had their careers cut short because of injury.
Yeah.
Most of the time it doesn't happen on the field. No. Most of the time it's them doing something off the field. I've had guys that got in motorcycle accidents, skiing accidents, or tripped over their dog, or you name it. It's just a gambit of issues. But was it because of something they were doing, that hindered their ability to show up and be the best part of that team?
Yeah, and in some of that, I can slide that into regular work as well. But like most of those teammates, like Kobe Bryant was, go back to basketball. He was, from what I understand, one of the first ones to show up at practice and always one of the last ones to leave, because he strived to be the best that he could be every day. So he always put the time in. So when that comes for normal people like myself who don't have that kind of talent or didn't work hard enough to have that kind of talent, what do you do? Hey, I know I have to go to work. And the reason I have to go to work is because I want, a house for my wife and for my kids. And I want my kids to have, at least the necessities. And, if we can get some of their wants, that's always great too. But I've got a lot of needs that we have to have. And unfortunately, things are expensive, especially these days. And so what that means is I've got to go to work, and I'm at work at 6:30. I probably technically don't have to be there till 8 for multiple reasons. I'm there at 6:30 because there's a few of us that come in early. But the reason I go in early is because there's stuff I want to look at without anybody else there, for one, prepare my day and get myself ready in multiple ways, and take that extra time to be the best employee that I can be, even as a manager. So what do I do the night before? Am I staying up till 3:00 in the morning so that I can get up at whatever time I need to get up to be at work at 6:30? No. Have I before? Yes, which makes it very difficult for me to, one, get to work on time because I stayed out too late, especially when I was younger. Probably drank too stinking much.
And you're probably not very
fun to be around.
Very good when you're there.
I'm worthless. I could be worthless. When I was younger, it was easy to snap back. But, when you're not, you don't care, how late you go to bed, and you roll out of bed 5 minutes before you're supposed to be at work because you stayed out too late. You're not preparing yourself for the day. And a lot of people don't like that. I'll show up to work and I'll be there. But they don't want to put in that, like you were saying earlier, what do you got to do to be ready to go to work the next day? Get enough sleep, do all that stuff. People just don't want to do that. And I don't understand why.
Well, I think you obviously hit a really important spot when you started talking about providing for your family.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people are choosing to provide for their families. I think that's where some of this gets lost. I think, I think if you want to, you can start also looking at your family as a team, and you look at how many teams have broken up, in that arena, and you just wonder, like, oh, what's going on? Why is it that families break up when they were, think about how tight knit that team was at one point in time. You talk about chemistry. I guarantee everybody that's ever been a part of a family, even a family that is broken up, at some point in time, that broken
Yeah.
family was a very tight-knit family.
Yeah.
So, what is it that causes separation in families? And I guarantee you it's no different than the things
Yep.
that cause deficiencies in teams of any kind. It's just that somebody's not pulling their weight, somebody's not doing the things they need to do. But I guarantee you the one most important characteristic in a family, which is the same thing I mentioned about a really good teammate, is
Yeah.
that they're willing to sacrifice themselves for everyone else in the family. And
Yeah.
and if you start to see, broken families, you can look at them and you can see that there's a selfishness that goes along with it, and that, again, that's where the problem lies, where being a good teammate is concerned. If you're not trying to help the people around you,
Yeah.
you're probably not the best teammate, but you can be a contributor. At least you can
Yeah.
do the things you need to do to pull your weight,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't necessarily make you a good teammate. That makes you a mediocre teammate.
It can. That goes back to, like I said, with stuff that we're trying to teach our kids. When you have kids, like right now, we've got a teenage kid at home, right? And we're trying to explain to her the same as we did the other 3 kids when they were at home is, hey, you know what, Mom and Dad, we're trying to lead this team, and Brandy and I, as you and Steph, trying to lead the team. We're going to work every day, whatever that job is, and we're trying to provide, and we're doing X, Y, and Z. What we're asking you to do is, 1, clean up after yourself. I'm not here to do it for you now that you're old enough. Help us out a little bit. Hey, is the sink full of dishes?
You bet.
You want to do those dishes? Those goes back to having chores. Not enough. I don't know how many people have chore lists these days to do, or expectations for our kids. Well, we just want them to have fun and do things. They spend too much time on their computer, and so it's just easier for me to go ahead and do it. And a lot of times we do, and then we get mad because we do it. But if we can instill that at a young age to, hey, clean up after yourself, help us. And the more you help us, guess what happens? We help you. You know what? Those wants that you are wanting, we're more likely to say, yeah, let's do that. You know what? You're helping us. Let's reward you for your hard work.
Yeah, and another twist on that is that, as you are a part of a team, as you are a part of that team for a period of time, over the course of the time, hopefully you improve, or in a family you age and you become more responsible, which goes along with improving, I would say. And so you start to take on a little bit more responsibility.
Yeah.
And in my opinion,
Yep.
as parents, and you mentioned this just a
Yes.
second ago, if we're good teammates, it's not a matter of taking the burden of being a parent away and taking your kid and saying, hey, go over there and play video games, or taking them to their sport and not watching, just letting that be a babysitting tool. And, but the bottom line is as parents, if we're good teammates, we should be teaching our kids how to stand on their own 2 legs.
Yes.
Not being their best friends, which is great if that happens, or not letting them do what they want to do whenever they want to do it, just for convenience or lack of, for not having to deal with the burden.
Yeah.
So it's part of parenting is you're like the star player on a team, and you can either just show up to work and bring home the check every day.
Yeah.
Or when you come home, you can start to mentor the people who are in your household and teach them how to act right and do right. And inevitably, that's the goal of a parent is if you have children, is to try to make them become something that is I would consider a contributor, a contributor to society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that goes back to why I've decided that, it was a little more than 10 years ago that I decided, and Brandy will tell you, she prayed over me like crazy when I was asleep to get me to start going to church again. I did go to church when I was younger. I mentioned that before. But as a kid, I just wasn't quite getting the full concept of this as a team. I was still more self-centered as a kid, which most of us are as children. We're a little more absorbed, and that's okay to a degree. As we're small, 2-year-olds, they're terrible twos. That's it. That's the most self-absorbed as you can possibly be. You're like, my diaper needs changed. I'm stinking hungry. Help me out.
Give it to me now. I'm going to cry.
When they're 2, it's okay. But as they're turned 3 and 4, you're thinking, you know what? You're going to go to the bathroom in the big boy potty because that helps me and that makes you a good teammate. That helps me out. I don't have to do these things. But honestly, as funny as that sounds, that's developing that person to become a better person when they have that self awareness to where, I need to do this for myself, and it does benefit others when I do these things for myself. So it's starting to care about what you do for that other person. It starts young, and if you don't have that when you're a child, you're not going to be a good teammate on your sports. If you play sports, you're not going to be a good teammate in school because you're disruptive, most likely. And you don't really care if anybody else can hear the teacher because you're just there to have fun. And that's a big issue as well. So you're just so self-absorbed that nobody wants to be around you. And then that's not good. And when you turn into an adult that's that way, and I know a lot of them that are that way, it's terrible. So going back to what I was saying is a little more than 10 years ago, I decided I'm tired of being self-absorbed. Even 10 years ago, I was fairly self-absorbed, I think, compared to where I'm at now, because I decided I need to be a better person. How do I need to be a better person? Well, where should I start looking? And in churches, for me, where I decided that's where it needed to come from. I needed to reflect that image of God that I was aware of as a child. And then I saw so many people in my life be that way, to where the better person that I can be, it makes me a better teammate. I just keep saying this over and over again, but it helps me be a better husband, and it helps my wife when I'm better. It helps her be a better wife.
Absolutely. You think just about let's just simplify it into chores.
Yeah.
Think about the things you do around the house. And you have your children do chores because they need to learn how to kind of carry the weight. And eventually, though, it becomes less of a chore and more like, I need to do this because this is me helping the team. If I don't do this, somebody else is going to have to.
Yeah.
So in terms of like that kind of stuff, I think that's the message is like you're part of this team, and it's important that you just don't show up every day and go through the motions. At some point in time, you got to develop. You got to develop not just into a good ball player, but you got to develop in life and in the things that I did when I was 18. Golly, man, I'm so much different now than I was then, though I still have some of the same issues too.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is I've tried to become a better teammate. Why is it that I've strived to, change things in my life? It's not because of me. I liked those things, they were great, but because I have a wife that I'm accountable to, and kids that I'm accountable to, and children that I give lessons to, that I'm accountable to, and families that I'm accountable to. So, I just can't be all about me, because if I was, if I chose just to do that, then somebody else is going to have to pick up the slack, and that's not fair. I'd rather take, and think about it. If it was you and your family,
yeah,
and it was like, you got to do all this stuff so they can live, you would do it in a second.
Well,
and in life, it kind of can be portrayed the same way as like what everything that you do is taking burden away from the people who are near and dear to you. I'm talking about in the home,
Yes.
Everything you do is taking a burden away from somebody else. And if you look at it like that, you really start to feel a sense of contribution and purpose. Yeah. And you start to also understand, like, golly, man, this person doesn't have to do that now because I did it already. And
I took that off of them.
Right.
Yeah, especially, if And I could be a better, I'm sure Brandy's going to listen to this and he goes, wow, he could be a little bit better teammate around the house sometimes than what he is. Because why am I doing the dishes more than anybody or whatever it may be? But jokingly, but seriously at the same time, I'm sure she's thinking it. But, go back to the church a little bit, why I like and love the church that we go to, Westridge. I did go to River a little while, and you guys were going to River before Westridge was founded. But man, the team that we've got, like today, just listening to some of the stuff that was going on in the announcements. We're as a team, as a group in our church, we're there to help develop the youth. We've got a pretty good youth program, it seems like, that's going on, and some good leaders in that area that are setting good examples for our kids that are part of that, which actually we don't have any kids part of the youth program, but the kids in our church are developing and learning so many different things. During the summer, the last several years, they've gone to, is it South Dakota? Or they've been going to a,
retreat type thing?
No, they've been going to an Indian
reservation
to help them out. They are pretty poor on the Indian reservation, and Dave has a adopted brother that's American Indian, and he's been part of this reservation at one point, and that's got us to help these underprivileged kids find out who God is and throw a little bit of Jesus' love to them. That's a good team right there, to go out and help others that are less fortunate than you, and not for you, but to help them. But man, the stuff that these kids are gaining from that, the stories that have come out of these kids going there and putting their hand out to help other kids has been great. Our church in 2 weeks is having a garage sale to help one of our teammates, our churchgoers. She's needing some money that she just can't come up with on her own. So we're coming together as a group and having this garage sale in 2 weeks. And then also in 2 weeks, we have this organization called Family Promise, to where we're opening up our church for a week to bring in homeless families that need a place to sleep, a place to stay that's safe and secure, and we're providing food for them. And we're not doing it to make Westridge bigger or in name. We're doing it because that's what we should be doing for one another. Love our neighbors as ourselves. So if I was, in need, man, I would hope somebody, if I couldn't provide, I'll take a help. But in that help, I'm also trying to better myself and get to the point where I can help somebody else. That development of myself personally is the biggest thing that I've gained at church. And I think we try to reach out to others to help them do the same, because when this is all said and done, and however old I am when I die, I don't want to be known as, somebody that did, whatever. I want to be known as somebody that was caring and compassionate, and man, he did everything he could to help others. Mm-hmm. That would be something that I would rather see, and instead of, he had, a big house or fancy car and stuff like that.
As you were talking, I was thinking about, you were talking earlier about development and that word and how it pertains to a team. And it just kind of took me back to the family, and I started thinking about like kids. Kids are at the age when they're young, they're going to develop.
Yeah,
they're going to develop no matter what. Yes. So you got to determine, like, okay, what is it that I want to give them to help them develop into who I want them to be. And that's our responsibility as parents. And it's the same thing in the church. You talked about our children's ministry.
Yes.
What do you think they're hearing in there? When they go to church on Sunday, they're playing games and stuff like that. But it's all Bible based information, and it's just planting a seed in these kids so they grow up with some purpose aside from just wanting to survive. To get your nose.
It was a little hot. Sorry.
Well, nevertheless, but development of your children is kind of a given,
Yeah.
But what about everybody else in your life? What about the people like I'm developing kids in the building? If I stopped at just teaching them how to pitch or how to throw the baseball, I wouldn't be helping them a whole lot, in my opinion, because it always goes into, the mental or the emotional side of things, and just the mechanical part of it is just a small portion. But the way they handle themselves, the way they respond to failure, the way they respond to success, the way they have they're focused or driven to
Right.
be good at what they do. Those things are so relative when it comes to life, and it just starts in sports, and at a young age. That's why I think team sports are so important at a young age. It teaches you how to start caring for other people.
Yes.
Whereas if you live a life of solitude, I mean, you're going to figure out how to eat, how to survive, and how to get yours. But I think we're called to be a relational community, and so whatever your community is, I'm sure most people are on more than one team.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. If you're a good person. You should care about, others. I mean, Unfortunately, I've met a lot of guys. I'm going to say guys, because I'm just going to say a lot of the guys that I've worked with in the past, some of these older guys, they never got married, because you know what? I don't want to have kids. I don't want to bring kids into this world, because it's so screwed up and terrible. And so they live that bachelor life. And, to a degree, yeah, that can be a lot of fun when you don't have any responsibilities except yourself. You don't have to worry about anybody else. It has its benefits short term. Now, as they've gotten older, I know some guys in their 60s and they're still single. They still live that bachelor life, and they have no one. And they have told me, if I really would have realized when I was in my 20s what it would be like in my 60s and not have family, because you know what? The older we get, our parents start to die, and the older we get, our friends start to die at different times in our lives. And the next thing you know, you look around and there ain't anybody there.
Left.
And you may have a few friends sprinkled out, but a lot of the friends that they have are married, and they have kids, and they have grandkids, and they have that relationship that these guys that like I said, a few that I do know, they don't have it. And I can say it's sad to hear that story, because I've got that thing that I can't imagine to be without.
Mm-mm. Well, could you, I mean, if you just hypothetically,
Yeah.
you wake up in the morning, maybe you got a house, maybe you got a job, whatever, but you don't have any people in your life that are near and dear to you. That doesn't mean you can't create that, but the bottom line is I try to think about that environment, and to some degree it's kind of enticing. I mean, I come back here almost every morning, and I'll stand in front of this cross and say a prayer, and it's fortunate I got this in my backyard, but
Yeah.
But what is it that most people strive for every day? When they get up, if you're all by yourself, and you don't have anybody to share everything that you work so hard for, to me, that's not enjoyable. I mean, if I had all the nice things in the world, but I was all by myself, I don't know if I would enjoy that. I don't think it would be fulfilling at all.
No, I mean, it's sitting, and I've done this a lot because the job I had before this one, I traveled. Let's use this as an example. I traveled all across the United States by myself, and there was a lot of fun going on, but then you'd go back to that hotel room after whatever, I put in my hours for the day, and now I'm back in my hotel room and I'm completely by myself. And I'm like, wow, this is sometimes nice. You don't hear any bickering, you don't hear any yelling, and you don't have any responsibilities, and you just kind of chill out. But man, that gets awfully old after a while. It gets so boring after a while that I just couldn't imagine that would be my actual life. And
Right.
it's kind of scary to think about. So yeah, why are we on this earth? And it's not to be by ourselves. We were designed, as we were saying earlier, to be in relationship. And so we need to be. So let's do that. Let's, we have a family. We raise these kids. They grow up. That's what you want. And yeah, they're going to move out of the house and then they're going to start their family. But then you got that extended family. You got more relationship. And I've got relationship with my grandkids now, which is phenomenal. It's so cool what you're getting ready to experience here very soon. What that's like, just to have that little one. And as they grow, it's going to get even better. And I just couldn't imagine not having that. So that's what I get up for every day, is for those relationships, and not to work, but while I'm at work, I try to do my best. And when I'm at home, I'm trying to do my best. I'm trying to be the best person I can be for my wife and for my kids and for myself. Because if I'm just that self-absorbed and when I am, I'm angrier. And then you turn into that angry old dude. Yeah. And everybody knows one of those.
It's just not. It's not fulfilling.
It's not fulfilling at all. It's sad.
Temporarily, like you said, it can be, but it's not over the course of time. It becomes, I think, a realization as I've gotten older. The things that are valuable, and there's things that I've enjoyed, and I think everybody enjoys the cars, going camping, things like that. Fishing, I love to fish, but if I had all those things, if I had the car and I could go fishing every day and I could do all these things apart from the people that I was near and dear to, I would not do those things. I think, and hopefully you can have a mix of both, but it doesn't have to be one or the other. But I think it's important. It's important to be a teammate in all facets of life, whatever it is, whether it's your job, show up and be a contributor. If it's your family, be a contributor. But you can also be a bad teammate, and I think, what happens to bad teammates over the course of time. They generally get weeded out, because you can't have team chemistry if you got some bad apples, and it only takes one or two or whatever. So, I'm not trying to scare anybody. I just think it's real. If you're walking through this world and you're constantly thinking about, like, man, what can I get? Where am I going to eat? What am I, what can I buy myself, or sky's the limit, then, it's going to lose its purpose after a period of time.
Yeah. And after, the best way I've found, relationship-wise, it was just keep it that way too. In that relationship, how, let's say if I was single, how am I trying to find the one, the right person? Is it that soulmate that everybody likes to push? It's really difficult to walk in someplace and just go, oh, that person right there looks perfect. And then a lot of times you find out those people aren't good. And then people get disillusioned and like there's just not that Mr. Right or Mrs. Right, Miss Right for me out there. And then they just get upset and
bail out.
And they bail out. But the best way goes back to developing, as we've been talking, yourself. You need to spend time on developing yourself. And that's not becoming self-absorbed. It's becoming a better person. And when you become a better person, you're going to attract the right person. And that doesn't mean that those people are perfect, but it's the perfect person for you. And then maybe together, and I go back to Jordan Peterson. I heard him say this the other day. Then you decide, you know what? Hey, I think you're about as screwed up as I am. How about we get in this together? And we're going to say, hey, we're going to fight a good, fair fight, and we're going to grow our relationship together. And I promise you that I'll do my best for you. And if you can promise me the same thing, you know what? I think everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you can develop yourself, eventually you'll probably be able to help develop others.
Yeah.
And that ultimately should be, the goal is to emulate Christ. And because of that, people are going to be attracted by what you have, and it's going to impact them too. And they're going to start to crave the things you have. And it's not again, there's not a scripted way to go about it. It's just like make good decisions. Everybody knows right and wrong. Everybody knows what their responsibility is. And if they don't, it's not hard to have a conversation with somebody and figure it out. And those conversations probably need to happen too. And communication is a huge part of any team. If you don't have it, they're probably going to struggle as a team. So, praying together, talking with each other, being available. Sometimes it's not even giving advice. Sometimes it's just being there, a big hug or just an ear or a shoulder to lean on, like Elizabeth did this morning with you at church. Those things are big. And to me, it's a valuable part of what we do, and it provides fulfillment. And that's the thing, is like when you feel like you've done something to help somebody else, it's going to make you feel a lot better about who you are.
Oh, absolutely. And, Brandy's and I've had some conversations to where, sometimes, one of us may not feel like, it's not marriage is not 50-50.
Oh,
I've heard this
100,
before.
100.
It's everybody trying, what, you can only do so much. And some days you may have to give 70%.
But give me 100 of what you got more that day.
Yeah. I just don't have it. I don't have it for whatever reason. I'm super tired. I'm physically exhausted for whatever reason. I'm sick. You know what? When somebody's sick, when mom is sick, you better step up, or you're going to hear about it. And that's not just my wife. It's sometimes when I'm sick, things aren't going to get done. And if you're not going to be willing to step up and help,
that's when your teammates come into play, right? They got to pick up your slack.
So many people that don't want to be that.
And I don't know if you heard what I just said, but there was a manager in Texas when I was there as the bullpen coach. His name was Jeff Bannister, and Jeff was a very inspirational guy. He had he read a lot of inspirational books, and he had a lot of really cool things. And one thing he always said was, when you show up to the ballpark, bring 100% of what you have that day.
Yeah.
And so you might only have 50% that day, but give us what you got, and your teammates then can pick you up, and they're going to feel pretty good about picking you up because they generally know the effort you give otherwise, you know, and that's where it comes in. If you're falling short one day, but you've been putting forth the effort on a regular basis, people are going to be inclined to help you out. But if you're that guy who does that every day, pretty soon, no one's going to feel sorry for you anymore, and it's going to end up costing you.
Yeah, and I've been that guy before. I'm not trying to pretend that I've got it figured out by any means, because when I was in high school, I was terrible. I was a lot of times a terrible teammate because I just got so self-absorbed and felt sorry for myself some days, to be honest, to where, yesterday I did so much more than everybody else today. I'm just going to kick back and not work as hard. And I can sit back and reflect on that and go, God, what a jerk.
Yeah.
And that's terrible. And I don't want to be, thank God, it's not just that high school years that people are holding me accountable for today, because otherwise, man, it wouldn't be fun at all. So, I had that opportunity to develop and become a lot better, I think a better person, and I've said this before, than what I was last week. And that's what I'm going to try to strive for, to be just better than what I was the day before. And there's so many people that unfortunately don't do that. And I'm just trying to be an example, not just to my family, but I'm trying to be an example to the people that work for me, the people that are around me, to where maybe they'll, that reflection, some days it'll come back, and I think it just makes life easier.
You think about just in terms of what you just said. I mean, you didn't get to where you were without somebody else's influence. I didn't get to where I am without somebody else's influence. I could name names, but we don't have enough time. And I guarantee you people don't want to necessarily hear a bunch of names, but there's been countless people who have impacted me as a human being, as a person. And, sometimes it's people I didn't even get along with. Sometimes somebody said something that I went, you know what, that was pretty good. And it might not have been the best relationship that I had with that person, but somebody has something to offer you. And I think it's just important to be open and willing to, like we said, develop and grow and become a better person, whatever that means to you. I think a of course, in Christianity, it's pretty clear what that means. But even in just a secular world, it doesn't matter. There's still a right way to treat people, and I think eventually you'll realize that whole system of morals comes from somewhere, and hopefully you'll continue that search and try to find where that is. And it was the search that it got me. I wanted to, like, why is it that some people are jerks and some people are like super, super nice? What is it that motivates people to be good and versus not be good, or be a good teammate, or everything they can to hold a family together, or hold a job down, or better their business? That there's some people that are going out on the limb trying to do everything they can do, and then there's some people that just they just don't, and it's unfortunate, but it's the way it is. And I just hope that I hope people start to strive towards something different that's more purposeful, and I just think the bottom line is, if you're trying to help other people in any capacity, that it can't be bad.
No, it's always good. So, that's, I think, what we tried to do. I mean, we're trying to be good teammates for each other, be good brothers in Christ, and brother-in-laws, however you want to say it, and help each other in any way we can.
Sometimes you bring the cigars. Sometimes I bring the cigars.
Yeah, or at least I bring my own to be supportive.
Yeah, they're expensive.
They're not cheap. This is a need, not a need.
No,
this is
it's
want.
a want.
It's a want. So,
but the fruits of our labor, we got to spoil ourselves from time to time, and there's nothing wrong with that, as long as it's not sacrificial to someone else's health and well-being. And there's a time and a place.
Yeah,
we make a time and a place to do this. But it's not us neglecting our other responsibilities to do it.
No, because if that was the fact, then we wouldn't be able to do this.
Right.
We wouldn't. Our wives wouldn't let us have the time to do this. We're like, no, jerk, get your butt back here at the house, because you haven't done XYZ around here and carried your weight.
Yeah.
So we try to do that, and we try to be a good role model, a good example, and that's what I hope people could say about me.
And sometimes we suck trying.
Yeah, and I don't want people. It's not a pride thing. It's not for my ego. It's just that's what hope the light I hope that they see is he's a pretty good guy.
Yeah,
and not for me, but for them. And if it makes them better, great. That's a win. So,
and it's hard to be a good teammate. It's hard. I mean, you can't really turn it off. There are times where you need to rest, and that's understandable. But at the same time, if you just choose to be a certain way and it's harmful to the people around you, then boo-hoo. Yeah.
Well, I think we've covered that pretty well.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, being a teammate is a pretty broad topic, and there's, again, we've talked about a lot of things that are fairly broad, but we're not trying to define it or tell you that I'm not the best person as far as defining teammate, but I can tell you I've seen a lot of teams, and I've been on a lot of teams, and I've seen a lot of good teammates, and I know what that looks like, and it doesn't just stop in baseball. It's all over the place, and even people you don't know. I mean, you can walk into a restaurant and observe people, and you can see the people in that family who are good teammates and bad teammates just by observing and watching how they go about their business. But yeah, we don't have to beat it up for sure. But I think it's a neat perspective.
It's a good topic. Another one of those broad topics that we can talk about again and again as we go on. So, hey, I've enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, me too. You're a good teammate.
Well, thank you, sir. And I have felt the same way about you, and you've helped me in many ways.
Well, likewise.
And one thing I just realized that what we didn't bring out here that's not sitting here close by
is the bell.
You don't have your bell. How are we going to end it?
Ding. Thank you. Life and Grace Podcast. Subscribe, thumbs up it.
Like it, share it if you'd like to. We're going to keep having conversations whether you do or not, because that's what we do.
Absolutely.
Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
Good night.